Now there were none left who'd been present in those dark years, but the people remembered. They made sure that their children would always remember on the day of the equinox, when the Alali gathered in groups of 10 or 12 for the day of commemoration. Even though he was eager to ride east to Deverrian, Ibani Salamandariel would never have left the Elven lands until he'd celebrated this most holy and terrifying of days. In the company of his father, Deverrian Silverhand the Bard, he rode up from the seacoast to the joining of the rivers Corripan and Delondariel, near the stretch of primeval forest that marked the border of the grasslands. There, as they'd expected, they found an Aladdin, or clan meet. Scattered in the tall grass were 200 painted tents, red and purple and blue, while the flocks and herds grazed peacefully a little distance away. A little apart from the rest stood 10 unpainted tents, crudely stitched together from poorly tanned hides. "By the dark sun herself," Deverrian remarked, "it looks like some of the forest folk have come to join us." "Good. It's time they got over their fear of their own kind." Deverrian nodded in agreement. He was an exceptionally handsome man, with hair pale as moonlight, deep-set dark blue eyes slit vertically like a cat's, and gracefully long pointed ears. Although Ibani had inherited the pale hair, in other ways he took after his mother's human folk. His smoky grey eyes had round irises, and his ears, while slightly sharp, passed unnoticed in the lands of men. They rode on, leading their 8 horses, 2 of which dragged travois, loaded with everything they owned. Since Deverrian was a bard and Ibani a girthin, that is, a storyteller and minstrel, they didn't need large herds to support themselves. As they rode up to the tents, the people ran out to greet them, hailing the bard and vying for the honour of feeding him and his son. They chose to pitch the ruby-rent tent near that of Tantor, a woman who was an old friend of the bard's. Although she'd often given his father advice and help as he raised his half-breed son alone, Ibani found it hard to think of her as a mother. Unlike his own mother back in Eldith, whom he vaguely remembered as soft, pale and cuddly, Tantor was a hunter, a hard-muscled woman who stood 6 feet tall and arrow-straight, with jet-black hair that hung in one tight braid to her waist. Yet when she greeted him, she kissed his cheek, caught his shoulders and held him a bit away, while she smiled as if to say how much he'd grown. "I'll wager you're looking forward to the spring hunt," he said. "I certainly am, little one. I've been making friends with the forest folk, and they've offered to show me how to hunt with a spear in the deep woods. I'm looking forward to the challenge." Ibani merely smiled. "I know you," Tantor said with a laugh. "Your idea of hunting is finding a soft bed with a pretty lass in it. Well, maybe when you're fully grown you'll see things more clearly." "I happen to be 74 this spring." "A mere child." She tousled his hair with a calloused hand. "Well, come along. The gathering's already beginning. Where's your father gotten himself to?" "He went with the other bards. He'll be singing right after the retelling." Down by the river, some of the people had lashed together a rough platform out of travois poles, while Deverrian stood conferring with 4 other bards. All around it, the crowd spread out, the adults sitting cross-legged in the grass, while restless children wandered around. Ibani and Tantor sat on the edge near a little group of forest folk. Although they looked like the other elves, they were dressed in rough leather clothes, and each man carried a small notched stick, bound with feathers and coloured thread, which were considered magical among their kind. Although they normally lived in the dense forests to the north, at times they drifted south to trade with the rest of the people. Since they had never been truly civilized, the events that they were gathered to remember had spared them. Gradually the crowd quieted, and the children sat down by their parents. On the platform, 4 bards, Deverrian among them, took their places at the back, arms crossed over their chests, legs braced a little apart, a solemn honour guard for the storyteller. Maneva Conterial's son, the eldest of them all, came forward and raised his arms high in the air. With a shock, Ibani realised that this would be the last year that this bard would retell the story. He was starting to show his age, his hair white and thin, his face pouched and wrinkled. When one of the people aged, it meant death was near. "His father was there at the burning," Tantor whispered. Ibani merely nodded his acknowledgement, because Maneva was lowering his arms.